Elizabeth Borden was born on the 19th of July 1860 in Fall River, Massachusetts, to Andrew Borden, a wealthy property developer, and Sarah Borden. Sadly, her mother died when Lizzie was only 2 years old. This left Lizzie and her older sister Emma to be raised by their father. A few years later, Andrew married a woman named Abby, but the relationship between Lizzie and her stepmother was reportedly strained, and tensions in the household began to rise. Andrew Borden, though wealthy, was a notoriously frugal and strict man. The family lived in a modest two-storey house on 2nd Street, and though they had financial means for a more comfortable lifestyle, Andrew's tight-fisted ways kept them in relatively humble conditions. Lizzie and Emma were in fact quite socially isolated. They were not part of the local elite circles, despite their father's wealth. This sense of isolation, combined with a tense family environment, formed the backdrop for the events that would later unfold. The murders of Andrew and Abby Borden took place on the morning of August 4th, 1892. Andrew was 70 years old and Abby was 64. On that fateful day, Lizzie was at home with her father and stepmother when both of them were brutally murdered. Andrew was found bludgeoned to death in the living room, while Abby's body was discovered upstairs in the guest bedroom. Both victims had been struck with an axe, but the violence and brutality of the crime were particularly shocking. The weapon used, a hatchet, but there was no sign of forced entry into the house, leading the police to suspect that the murderer was somebody who knew the family well, someone with access to the home. Lizzie Borden was quickly identified as the prime suspect. There were several factors that made her the main focus of the investigation. The timing. Lizzie was one of the few people in the house at the time of the murders. She initially claimed that she was in the barn at the time of the killings, but her story was inconsistent. The strange behaviour. Lizzie's behaviour following the murders was seen as suspicious. She seemed cold and detached, and some witnesses described her as being unusually calm for someone who had just experienced such a traumatic event. She even tried to burn a dress she had been wearing on the day of the murders, which she later claimed was stained with paint. Lizzie had a strained relationship with her father and stepmother, especially her stepmother. It was said that Lizzie was unhappy with the way her father managed his wealth, and there were even rumours that Lizzie may have been upset over a recent inheritance. But despite these tensions, there was no clear financial motive for the murder. As a result of this behaviour and other inconsistencies in her story, Lizzie was arrested on August 11th, 1892. However, there was no direct evidence linking her to the crime. The investigation was plagued by poor handling of evidence, and the police were unable to determine a clear cause of death for either victim. Lizzie's trial began in June 1893. It was a highly publicised case, and the courtroom drama captured the attention of the nation. Lizzie's defence team argued that there was no physical evidence connecting her to the murders. They also suggested that Lizzie was a victim of a conspiracy, or that someone else was responsible for the deaths, although no other suspect was ever identified. The prosecution, on the other hand, struggled to present a strong case. There were no eyewitnesses, no murder weapon, and no clear motive. The evidence was largely circumstantial. As a result, the jury took just an hour before delivering a verdict of not guilty. Lizzie was acquitted of all charges, but the trial left her reputation in tatters. While she was never convicted of the murders, many people continued to believe that she was responsible, and the case remained unsolved. After the trial, Lizzie and her sister Emma moved into a grand home in Fall River, where Lizzie lived until her death in 1927. To this day, the Lizzie Borden case remains shrouded in mystery. Many theories have been proposed over the years, ranging from the idea that Lizzie was a victim of a deep psychological trauma, to the suggestions that there was a deeper conspiracy at play. Some have even speculated that Lizzie was not the murderer at all, and that someone else in the household may have been responsible. What makes this case even more mysterious is the fact that Lizzie's behaviour after the murders and during her trial never quite matched the image of the woman accused of such a heinous crime. She lived for another 35 years after her acquittal, but she was never able to shake the stigma of her involvement in the killings. Her life and case continued to capture public imagination. Lizzie became the symbol of the perfect crime, and her name lives on in folklore, books, films and plays. To this day, the rhyme, Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41, is widely known, though it's based more on legend than fact. Many people believe that the Borden house has never truly been at peace. Some even say that Lizzie herself may have been haunted by the spirits of those who died there. The house where the murders took place still stands today. It's now a bed and breakfast. Guests come from all over the world, not just for the history, but for the ghosts. Many report hearing footsteps, especially on the staircase when no one is there. Others have seen shadows moving, doors opening on their own, and felt cold spots in the room where the murders happened. Children's cries are also heard, supposedly the 2 kids who were murdered next door in 1848. And the fire alarm goes off once every couple of months, always at 3 a.m. Some have claimed to hear a woman's voice crying softly at night, perhaps the spirit of Abby Borden, still trying to understand what happened to her. A lady stayed in a room where Lizzie's stepmother was killed and said she woke up to the feeling of someone watching her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a woman in old-fashioned clothes standing at the foot of the bed. The woman vanished within seconds, but the guest was so frightened she left before sunrise. As for Lizzie herself, after the trial she remained in Fall River until her death, but those close to her said she was never quite the same. She often kept to herself. Some believe she may have been haunted not only by guilt, if she was indeed guilty, but by the actual spirits. There are reports of her speaking to herself in empty rooms or reacting as if someone unseen was present. Whether that was a troubled mind or something more is up for debate. Skeptics, of course, all say it's nonsense, old buildings creak, our minds play tricks and stories grow in the telling. But even the most logical of us can admit there's something deeply unsettling about the house. So whether you believe in ghosts or not, Lizzie Borden's story continues to echo through time, not just in history books, but perhaps in the very walls of her old home.